Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wassalamu ala Rasulillah. So we continue to read in the book, in the chapter of breastfeeding and what relates to that. Somebody changed the page or what? No, it's right here. Okay. So we read the next hadith. عن ابن عباس رضي الله عنهما أن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم أريد على ابنة حمزة فقال إنها لا تحل لي إنها ابنة أخي من الرضاعة ويحرم من الرضاعة ما يحرم من النسب. So this hadith narrated by Ibn Abbas, he says the Prophet Muhammad صلى الله عليه وسلم was offered to marry the daughter of Hamza. Hamza, how does Hamza relate to Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam? Uncle. So basically, she's his cousin, and it is allowed in Islam to marry the cousin. He said, she is unlawful to me, for she is the daughter of my brother in suckling. And what is unlawful by reason of blood, and what is unlawful by reason of blood relationship is unlawful by reason of suckling relation. The opposite. What is unlawful by reason of suckling is equal to what is unlawful by reason of blood relationship. Okay. Now here, Hamza obviously was almost the same age as the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and they were breastfed by the same woman. I don't know if they mentioned the lady here or not. Thuwayba, mawlatun li Abi Lahab. Okay, so the lady who breastfed both of them, her name was Thuwayba. And that's why Hamza was very close to Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And he grieved a lot when he was killed in the battle of Uhud. Like he grieved no one other. He was very affected by his death in the battle of Uhud. So he was his uncle, also his brother in through breastfeeding. And he also, basically he grew up with him because they were about the same age, and throughout their life they were together. This hadith shows that people were honored by offering their daughters to marry, for marriage to Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. It was desirable for anybody to offer their daughters to marry the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. There could not be any more honor for any family or any woman or her family than that. And this responds to people who say, oh, Prophet Muhammad ﷺ was a man of desire. He just wanted to have as many women as he could have. No, he could have had, if he wanted to have thousands of women, he could have had thousands of women. Through this, and even when he used to win battles and they were captives of war, he used to free them and marry them like a regular marriage, although he could have not gone through that process, but he used to do that. And this is another example here of somebody wanting him to marry a woman, he is basically bound by the laws of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Although she's his cousin, originally lawful for him, but since him and Hamza were breastfed by the same woman, he becomes what to her? This woman? He becomes what? No. She's like her uncle. He becomes her uncle through breastfeeding. She's his cousin, but she's the daughter of his brother through breastfeeding. So he becomes her uncle through breastfeeding. And so a woman cannot marry her uncle. So he said she is unlawful to me. Also remember the hadith when a woman came and she offered herself for him to marry her. As he was sitting with his companions, she wanted him to marry her, and also he declined that offer. He says, I'm not in need for marriage, or it's something that I'm not thinking about nowadays. And that's when the other companion who was sitting in that same setting, he asked the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, can I marry her? Remember the hadith when he says, what do you have to offer her in dowry and so on? Okay, another example. So these offers were made to him all the time, but he did not take advantage of any offer that is offered to him. He's bound by the law of Allah, and by يعني what is in the best interest of the ummah, because of most of the women he married were either widows or older than him. Yes, there were some who were younger than him, but also he married them also for other interests to bring their people close to Islam, such as this lady Safiya bint Huyay ibn Akhtab. She was from a Jewish tribe, and he wanted to them to be close to Muslims and introduce them to Islam and so on. Although she was caught in a battle and she was a captive, he freed her, he honored her, he freed many of her people as a dowry for her. And the Sahaba, when they saw that he married a woman from that tribe, they said, we can't have captives from the relatives of Prophet Muhammad, so they freed the other people from her tribe and so on. So whenever he married, he calculated this very carefully, and what kind of benefit it has. And of course, he's also a man, and he is lawfully allowed to fulfill his manly desires through the lawful ways that Allah has allowed as well. But always he put the hikmah and the interest of the ummah as well whenever in these kind of actions. Now,
The other Sahabi who said that he was ready to marry the woman.
yes.
It seems easy it's not very easy to just make a decision, I'm ready to marry this woman.
Well, nowadays marriage is complicated, but it wasn't complicated like this in the past. It was very easy. The life was simple, not like today. He doesn't have to go rent a house or pay mortgage or anything like that. That was not present. Even he didn't have any money. He had nothing. And still he wanted to offer her the lower garment that he's wearing. So, and twice he goes back to the house looking for anything. He can't find anything to offer her in dowry. People were simple, yani. Now, before I conclude this lesson, because I mentioned to you before the Rihla of Bukhari, the journey Bukhari made. Remember how many kilometers I said he went from country?
8,000.
I said 8,000 and I was wrong. It's actually, I'll tell you, I got the numbers in detail here, from what country to what country he went. So Bukhari started from his home country, Bukhara, okay? Then he went to a town called Balkh. It is 600 kilometers from Bukhara. And all these trips were either on a camel or by foot. So 600 kilometers, he goes to a country called Balkh. I'll go quickly because it's a big trip he went. Then 800 kilometers to a town called Maru. Then 140, and of course, in each one of those, he's just not visiting the town. He's sitting there for days, sometimes weeks, sometimes months, to meet all the scholars and the students of knowledge and collect all the hadith that are available in that town. He's not going on tourism. He has a mission to collect all the sunnah of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ from all towns that he can. Why is that? Why can he not just sit in Bukhara and collect the hadith from Bukhara alone or from the surrounding areas? Why do you think he has to?
Some people are not available.
Well, no internet, no phone lines.
Why does he have to go? Because not all, the hadith are basically the Sahaba who learned from Prophet Muhammad got dispersed throughout the Muslim world. All the way, Bukhara is past Afghanistan and past Iran. It's way there in these countries that were part of the Soviet Union, close to China. And then, so all the Sahaba were dispersed all the way from there to the west coast of Africa, and all the way north and south as well to Yemen, and then also into Africa as well, in Egypt and so people, when they spread, this Sahabi for instance, he heard, let's say, 50 ahadith from Prophet Muhammad. He went for instance to Bukhara. People of Bukhara know these ahadith, but not all these ahadith were heard by all the other Sahaba. So another Sahabi heard another 50. 25 overlap with this Sahabi, but there are 25 that are unique to this one. And this guy went maybe to Egypt, and he lived there. He taught those people these ahadith. So in order for those people, compilers of hadith, to collect the ahadith, they had to go do something called a rihla fi talab al-hadith. It was a mission that they used to have. And there are books that the scholars basically publish, historical books, called Al-Rihla fi Talab al-Hadith. Imam Khatib al-Baghdadi has a book like this. He talks about each one of those compilers, where he went and who he met, and not only that, they tell you exactly what town and what masjid they went to, who they met, students and of knowledge and scholars, and the date he entered. Because even the dates are important. They kept the dates so that if somebody says, oh, I met Bukhari in this town, such and such year, they go back to the dates and see, oh, Bukhari was here from this time to this time. You could not have met him. You're a liar. This is how they used to figure out people who want to, insinuate false ahadith by knowing those exactly where each compiler of hadith went, where each sahabi went, who his students were, who his teachers were, what dates he went into every place, and then you analyze anybody's claim based on all this information compiled from innumerable sources, multiple sources. Say anyway, Bukhara 600 kilometers to Balkh, 800 kilometers to Maru, 140 kilometers to Naysabur, 760 kilometers to a country called Ar-Ray. This is still very far in the east. Then 985 kilometers to a town called Wasit. Then 365 kilometers to Al-Basra in Iraq. All these kilometers just to get to Iraq still. And then 390 kilometers to Al-Kufa. Then 146 kilometers to Baghdad. Iraq was a big center for knowledge. So he went to 3 cities, big cities. Basra, Kufa, Baghdad. Finished Iraq, he went 1,530 kilometers to Medina. Okay? Then 435 kilometers to Mecca. Then 70 kilometers to Jeddah. Then he crossed the sea by ship, the Red Sea, to a town at the east coast of, it's either east coast of Egypt or east coast of Sudan, called Aydar. So on the east coast, just at the shore of the Red Sea, he went from the Saudi shore to the African shore, whether in Egypt or in Sudan. I don't know exactly where that town is. It's called Aydar. That's 130 kilometers across. And then he went 1,080 kilometers to Al-Fustat. What is Al-Fustat? Huh? No, Cairo. It used to be called Al-Fustat. Al-Fustat, yes. So he went to Al-Fustat, that is Cairo. And then he went 500 kilometers to Asqalan. Asqalan is towards Sham. And then 118 kilometers to Qaysariya. And then 400 kilometers to Dimashq. Then 915 kilometers back to Baghdad. Then he went back to Bukhara. This whole trip, he spent 16 years in this trip, collecting ahadith, and of course studying them meticulously, all the chains of narration for each single hadith he collects, from whom he got it, and specifically asks about the biography of each individual. He published books on the biography of all the scholars and students of hadith.
The total how many?
Sorry?
You put the total how many?
14,000 kilometers. 14,000 kilometers. If somebody again says, Bukhari, we don't care about Bukhari, just talk to them about this kind of information. What have you done and what do you know about the Sunnah of Prophet Muhammad ﷺ to challenge experts like this who have dedicated all their life. And Bukhari actually started his journey to acquire knowledge at a very young age, 16, 17. He was very young. And then he would not put a single hadith in the book after studying meticulously and knowing that it is authentic, until I used to think he used to make wudu and pray 2 rak'at. He used to make wudu, pray 2 rak'at istikhara, asking Allah for guidance. Should I put it or not put it? Although he knows it's authentic. But I came to know that he actually used to make ikhtisal, ghusl. To honor the hadith, he used to make the full wash and then do the 2 rak'at and then put the hadith in his book, subhanAllah. Inshallah, we'll stop here.
One small story with Bukhari.
Yeah.
Just maybe
Yes, absolutely. Go ahead.
It's the integrity of this person, mashallah. So he was, I think it was the trip in the sea.
Listen, guys.
He was traveling in the sea, and he had a bag of gold with him. And so one of these people on the boat saw the bag of gold, and he's a thief. So he started yelling, somebody stole my money. Somebody stole my money. I had a bag of gold, somebody stole my money. So he's hoping that people come and say, this guy stole my money. So the captain of the ship came and said, what's wrong? He said, so Bukhari, what he did before the captain came, he said, you know what?
I'm recording, okay?
Yeah. He thought, his integrity is so important because he's going to give the hadith about the Prophet ﷺ. He threw the money in the sea. So when he came in to look for the money, there's no money. Because he didn't want anybody to have any doubt about his authenticity and his integrity that he might be a thief. Because there might be a doubt that maybe he did steal the money. So he didn't want that doubt. He goes, I'd rather be poor than somebody say he's a liar.
No. Sure, stop
I
here. Yes.
wonder how did he get the resources to actually execute all these projects?
Yes, no, absolutely. I know he had a financial income coming to him. I will have to get you the financial resources that he had. I believe he inherited either a land or a house that he was renting out. I will have to get you that. Okay.
So he kept on, I suppose, writing the book as he was going along.
Absolutely. The manuscript of the book or the blueprint, he was writing as he goes. But he had an incredible memory. He was able to sit for days just listening and acquiring and absorbing, and then he can then sit down and empty all this knowledge. His memory was absolutely incredible.
Then it's not alone. He has some students that accompany him, or was it?
No. He was doing this single-handedly.
Yes.
But of course, when he became so prominent as a scholar, students from all over the Muslim world used to flock to him to study his book and take it directly from him, because it was not allowed for you to just narrate from a book like we do today. It was not allowed for somebody to read a hadith from a book and give it and deliver it. That was not allowed. You would have to take it directly from the author. This is how meticulous and diligent they were, because just to make sure that nobody insinuates anything in the book that the author didn't actually put in there. So that was one of the methods, and that was the standard method, that nobody can just read from a book. If somebody brings the book and says, okay, I got this hadith from a book and I'm delivering to the second generation, not accepted. Have you met the author? Not met him? Then the hadith becomes weak right away from that chain of narration, unless it is proven from a different chain of narration. Okay?
And also I have a question.
Yes.
Is there a common practice in some countries, suckling or breastfeeding to other people?
Yes, it was a common practice all over.
Today, right now, in today's...
Even today, it is a common practice, but in the past, it was a very common practice in Arabia, because they wanted the children to be brought up outside of the city center. They wanted them to basically live in the rural areas and the wilderness to become healthy and strong, and acquire the authentic tongue and language that is not mixed with any kind of foreign dialects that you can maybe find in the cities. Yes.
But in our times, people should have issue with...
In our times, relatives still breastfeed each other's relatives. If there are two sisters, and they had babies around the same time, and she went out and this baby got hungry, the sister would breastfeed, her sister's children. That's okay.